Students from Stoneman Douglas High visited members of Congress yesterday. They met with the number 3 House Republican, Majority Whip Steve Scalise of Louisiana. He was nearly killed in a shooting at a congressional baseball practice last June. Scalise made it through 7 surgeries and returned to work just 3 months later. He's with us now from the Capitol. Congressman, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Gail and John, and hey, Nora, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. I know you met with some of these survivors. What kind of changes did they ask for members of Congress to make?
We talked about policy, but really we talked a lot about shared experience. And obviously it got very emotional. You know, some of the things that they've been through are similar to some of the things that I've been through. And, you know, this is going to be a tough time for them. It already is. You know, but this doesn't go away. It's something that I know me and the other members of the congressional baseball team still talk a lot about what we went through, and I'm sure they as students are going to continue talking about what they went through. But we did talk again about some policy, but mostly just about where we are right now.
I want to ask you about some of those specifics of policy, because some of the survivors have talked about raising the age limit for those to be able to purchase an assault rifle. The president has indicated he might support that, raising the age to 21. Would you support that?
Well, right now, I think if you look, the laws are varied, and every state also has the ability to change their law. But there are a number of things that are being looked at right now. That's not one of the ones that's being talked about as much as basically is closing loopholes. We have a lot of mental health issues. We have some breakdowns at the federal and local level in law enforcement. Clearly, a lot of us have serious questions about the FBI and why this wasn't stopped in the first place when they had this kid handed to them on a silver platter months ago.
Congressman, in talking to some of my relatives who have AR-15s, they hear this debate taking place and they think it's an assault on their freedoms and that they are being lumped in with people who clearly shouldn't have access to weapons. Do you hear that same argument from your constituents?
I do hear that from constituents, and look, millions of people have weapons like the AR-15 and use them to defend themselves. They have it for self-defense, which is the tenet of the Second Amendment. And so that's one of the things that you've got to balance when you're looking at change in laws. You've got to recognize, number one, in cases like this shooting and so many others, multiple laws were already broken, but worse than that, big signs were missed, in many cases by government itself. And the fact that government missed so many of the signs and didn't do the things that they should have done to protect people is one of the reasons that people feel they should have a need to protect themselves and their family.
Given what you've said and people's feeling about personal freedom, the request from some of the students in Parkland and in other places that there be some limitations, any limitations of any kind, on the AR-15, that's just not going to happen, is it?
Well, you know, again, that's not one of the big discussions here. Closing problems with the loopholes, especially with the instant background check system. We passed a bill in the House called Fix NICS, which a lot of people are rallying around, that closes a lot of those loopholes with the instant background check system. That's a bill that passed the House. It was tied to concealed carry reciprocity, something that's been proven to actually increase safety. And so that's one of the things that we sent over to the Senate. The Senate's looking at a different version of that bill. They haven't passed anything yet on their side, but that is a bill that has passed the House.
It's pretty clear that law enforcement missed some very important clues and signals. They had lots of warnings, it seems. But as someone who has been through a shooting, do you still support AR-15s being on the street?
Well, again, you can talk about any one weapon, and if you ban that weapon, does that mean that nothing else is going to happen? I think if you look, I was fortunate in my case that I had law enforcement there on the scene who acted accordingly and took down the shooter. I wish that would have happened at the school, where clearly there was at least one law enforcement officer on the scene who hid instead of confronting the shooter. Maybe there were more. I think that needs to come out. And when was that known? I think those are the kind of things that we want to know when we say, before people go changing laws to take away the rights of law-abiding citizens, let's get the fact and see if other people didn't do their job in enforcing existing law. That's what angers so many people, is that existing laws are broken and then people want to change other laws that infringe on law-abiding citizens.
You talked about an emotional meeting that you had with the students, and I'm sure it was that. There was a very interesting article in the New York Sunday Times with a reporter who said by day these students are activists who are out there talking about gun control, but at night they are still healing very scared kids. What advice did you give to them, or what can you say to them as someone who's been through this on how to heal?
What I shared with them is obviously what they're doing up here is very important, and I think it's great that they are engaging in the political process. But when they go back home, they're going to be high school students again, and at some point they're going to be getting on with their daily lives, and this is going to still be lingering with them, the problems that they're going to be facing. They ought to be talking amongst themselves. I'm sure there'll be school-appointed counselors, but the fact that these students all went through this together, they should continue talking to each other. Don't go hide in a corner and kind of repress those feelings, because months later it could become a bigger issue. Talk through that experience. That's what we do up here, and it's helped all of us on the baseball team get through this. They ought to be doing the same thing.
All right, Congressman Scalise, it's really good to see you, sir.
Good to see you. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us.